seems every day there are new laws targeting kids who are like the kid that I was when I was growing up. Laws that reflect the fact that even people who are not anti-trans often find it hard to understand trans and non-binary identities. How does it feel? How do you know that you're some, different in that kind of a way when there's no messages that tell you? There are no models in the culture. There certainly weren't when I was growing up. So even people who are quite sympathetic can struggle to understand it and find it easy to misunderstand it. There's a lot of misrepresentation about trans and non-binary people, particularly children. So I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about it in relation to growing up as a Jew, because for me, growing up as a kid, those were the two minority identities that I grew up with. And they each informed the other. So the trans identity that I had told me that you could really deeply know yourself to be a kind of person. I grew up in a non-Jewish area, but that you could, even if nobody around you understands what or who you are, and nobody did at my school understand what it meant to be a Jew, you could really know that you were a Jew. And I really knew that I had this sense of female gender identification, even if no one understood it. While trans identity, what I now call trans identity, cut me off from the rest of humanity as near as I could tell. I didn't know that there were other people like me. My parents wanted me to grow up knowing that being Jewish was being different in a way that connected me to other people, that connected me to people in the present all over the world, that connected me to a country, Israel, that I might never go to, but somehow I was part of, that connected me to a past that stretched back thousands of years. And also, and this is really crucial, connected me to a future that depended on me. The Jewish people needed me to live and needed me to be Jewish and pass on my Jewishness to future generations. Those are messages that I think most American Jews who are raised Jewish get in one way or another. Particularly my generation was not that long after the Holocaust, so it had a specific resonance. But trans kids don't get that. Trans kids are not told, well, being trans connects you to this rich past and rich culture, and it connects you to people all over the world. And the future needs you to be trans and embrace your identity. And no, we're not told that. Nobody wants us to be who we are. And nobody cares if we exist or not. That's the message that we get. So being Jewish gave me crucial survival skills in terms of being a minority that I would not have had otherwise. But being trans made me appreciate Jewishness, and in particular Judaism, in a way that I think is not very common for people who, certainly people who grow up in a basically secular household like I did. For me, as you can see, I was clinging to Jewishness as a life raft. But also, being Jewish gave me a way to make sense of this deep feeling of God's presence and a sense of encounter and relationship with God. That it gave me a religious tradition to help me understand and think about and express that relationship. And that is really what kept me alive. And later, when I started living my trans identity and would talk to Jewish groups about it, I was surprised that so many were interested in the God part. And then I started to realize, yeah, actually, there was an advantage to growing up trans in terms of my Jewishness, because my isolation as a trans person, my sense that I was absolutely different, made me feel strangely comfortable with God, who was also totally different. In fact, when I was a kid, I felt like we were, hanging out together. This was the one friend I had in a certain kind of way. When I read the Torah, and this led to the book that I wrote, The Soul of the Stranger. I read it, not wrongly, I think, as being about how hard it is for someone who doesn't fit the categories of society that people use to identify one another, how hard it is for that person to find a place in community and to be loved by people you love because they don't see you, they don't understand you. And bringing that awareness enabled me to see that in a way, Judaism is demanding that each of us both make a place in our lives and in our communities for people who don't fit in anywhere, because that's the only way to make a place for God. But it's also saying we can do that without feeling we're alone. Because if we get in touch with our own differentness, and we all have differentness, I think all of us are to one extent or another kind of afraid of it. We don't want to be cut off from people by being too different. But what I discovered is getting in touch with that difference, you're still not alone, because that difference is a way of getting closer to God. And in Judaism, getting closer to God puts you at the center of community, even if the community struggles to relate to you.